My mother told me stories every night before bed. She would curl beside me, wrapping her tail around us both. One night, though, her story was different. She told me about the 3 little pigs. It started like the tale everyone in the forest knew. The pigs outsmarted the big bad wolf and lived happily in their brick house. But in her version, her voice trembled near the end.
And then those 3 pigs, they ate the poor wolf while he was still alive.
Why do they say wolves are dangerous, Mama? We didn't even do anything bad.
That's what they want you to believe.
I stared at her, wide-eyed and silent. That was when I noticed the scar on her head, a bald patch where no fur had grown back. I had asked about it once before. She hadn't answered.
Never trust pigs. They are the cleverest, most deceitful creatures in the forest. They're the most dangerous. Promise me you'll never go near them.
I promised, though I didn't understand why the forest feared wolves like us, while the pigs were loved. I held on to her words not because I believed them, but because she believed them so deeply. That changed the day I saw them. I was wandering along the edge of the woods when a tomato rolled into my paw. It was still warm from the sun. As I bent to pick it up, I looked up and saw 3 pigs just a few steps away. Their baskets were filled with tomatoes. All 3 were smiling. Something about those smiles felt wrong. I raised the tomato. I just wanted to give it back. I think you dropped this. They didn't reply. One of them threw a tomato at my face. It splattered across my muzzle. Then the second, then the third. They laughed and walked away like it was all a game. I didn't want revenge. I only wanted to know why. So I ran after them. They didn't run. Before I could react, they shoved me into the dirt. One pinned me while the others laughed, pulling out a pair of buzzing clippers. I screamed, terrified, as they sheared off patches of my fur. My skin stung. I howled at a sound I didn't even recognise as my own. That was when I heard voices approaching. Others in the forest had heard my cries. The pigs moved fast. They smeared tomato juice onto themselves, groaning and collapsing. A group of animals arrived in the clearing just as they hit the ground. Within seconds, they looked like victims. And I, mouth stained red, half-shaven and trembling, looked exactly like the monster they needed me to be. No one looked closely. No one asked what had happened. A wolf attacked them, someone said. The crowd rushed me. I curled into a ball, trying to shield myself, but their hooves and claws came down without mercy. I didn't fight back. I only cried. Then they left, satisfied, certain they had saved someone from a predator. I walked home alone. That night, I finally understood what my mother had tried to teach me. The truth didn't matter. The forest only believed what made them feel safe. After that, I stayed inside. I didn't speak. I didn't look outside. Only my mother remained. One morning, she told me she would go find food. Before leaving, she turned to me and said,
"Don't open the door for anyone."
She never came back. By nightfall, my hunger gnawed at me, but fear was louder. Eventually, I stood by the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of her return. What I saw instead made my breath stop. The 3 pigs were sitting by a fire, just outside the trees, turning something over the flames that looked like a tail. One of them looked up and met my gaze. I dropped below the window. Moments later, I heard a knock. I crept to the door and peered through the crack. It was her face. I opened the door, hope rising in my chest. But But it wasn't her, it was them. And in their hands they held her head. They stepped forward with a sack. I turned and ran. I ran until the air burned in my lungs. I didn't look back. I didn't have to. I knew they were following, certain they'd already won. They caught me. One dragged me down. Another pinned my arms. I screamed, but nothing came out. My voice was already gone. They cut off my ears. They pulled out my teeth. They stripped away my fur until I was raw and trembling. I wasn't a wolf anymore. And they weren't pigs. They put on my fur. They wore my face. They became the predator the forest had always feared. That night they hunted. They tore through the trees, killing rabbits, lambs and deer. They left behind torn bodies and blood. And in the morning, they cried. They told the forest they had been attacked again, that the wolf had returned, that they had barely survived. They claimed he had escaped, injured but alive, hiding somewhere in the shadows, and the forest believed them, because it was easier. Now I lie here, deep in the woods, my body broken and bruised. I try to move, but everything aches. My breath is shallow. My vision is fading. I can't speak. I can only listen to the voices drawing closer. The forest is coming. They think they found the monster. I hear the pigs among them, pointing toward where I lie. One of the sheep shouts that it's time to end this, that the wolf must be destroyed. One of the pigs walks past me and pauses. He leans in, just enough so that I can hear his voice.
You see? They only believe what we want them to believe. In the end, it's the winners who get to rewrite the story. And now, goodbye.
The scent of decay lingered in the air, a putrid mixture of rot and despair. Bodies lay sprawled along the dirt roads, their skin clinging to brittle bones, eyes hollow and unseeing. The wails of starving children echoed through the desolate village, their cries blending into the ceaseless wind. Hunger had transformed our world into a graveyard before death had even claimed us. My stomach clenched as I staggered into our home, the wooden walls barely holding together against the creeping cold. My father loomed over me, his face twisted in anger.
You useless girl!
He spat, his voice thick with resentment.
Your brother needs to eat. Get up and find something before he wastes away.
I flinched as his hand cracked against my cheek, sending me reeling. My brother, his golden child, curled under a thin blanket, too weak to lift his head. I swallowed my protest, knowing it would do nothing but earn me another blow. Instead, I obeyed, dragging myself beyond the dying village into the skeletal grasp of the forest. The trees stretched above me like twisted ribs, their barren branches whispering in the wind. I searched for anything. Roots, berries, even insects. But the earth had long since been stripped bare. My knees buckled beneath me and I collapsed against a moss-covered rock, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Then the scent came, sweet, earthy, irresistible. I turned my head and saw it, an unfamiliar plant nestled between gnarled roots, its leaves shimmering in the dim light. I reached out, plucking a handful and lifting them to my nose. The aroma wrapped around me like a comforting embrace, drowning out the gnawing emptiness in my stomach. Desperate, I placed a leaf on my tongue. Flavors exploded in my mouth. Warm bread, roasted meat, honeyed fruits. My vision blurred, my body sinking into blissful relief as the hunger dissolved. My last thought before darkness claimed me was that I had finally found salvation. When I awoke, the forest had shifted. The brittle cold had softened into something almost welcoming. I touched my stomach. No pain, no hunger. I felt alive. I gathered as much of the plant as I could carry and returned home, breathless with excitement. My father barely spared me a glance, but my brother, my frail, dying brother, parted his cracked lips when I pressed a small leaf to them. He chewed weakly at first, then more eagerly. His sunken cheeks flushed with colour, and before my eyes, he changed. That night we feasted. The hunger that had plagued us melted away, replaced by warmth, by laughter. For the first time in months, we dreamed of a future where we might survive. Morning came with screams. I opened my eyes to chaos, villagers surrounding our home, their faces twisted in horror. My father stood at the doorway, pointing a trembling finger at me.
She's a demon!
He howled.
She devoured her own brother!
I turned in confusion, my gaze landing on the bed where my brother had lain. But he was no longer there. Instead, bones jutted from the mattress, gleaming white and clean, picked dry as if by unseen hands. My hands. No, I whispered, stumbling backward. No, I didn't. They didn't listen. They never listened. Torches flared, the flames reflecting in their wild eyes as they surged forward. I ran. My feet pounded against the dirt, the forest swallowing me whole as I plunged into its depths. The voices faded, but the betrayal lingered. I would never return. Never again. Days blurred into weeks, then months. The forest became my home, the only place that didn't seek to destroy me. I lived on the plant, my hunger forever sated, my body never growing weak. I was alone. Until her. A girl. Thin as a reed, shivering beneath the trees. Her clothes hung from her bony frame, her eyes sunken and dull. I recognized that look, the acceptance of death, but I would not let it claim her. I knelt beside her, pressing a leaf to her hands. "Eat," I whispered. She hesitated before taking the offering. Her lips parted, and as she chewed, her gaze locked onto mine. For the first time in ages, I felt warmth spread through me. A connection. A purpose. Sleep claimed us both. When I woke, the world had changed again. My humble forest shelter had vanished. In its place stood a house unlike any I had ever seen. Walls of gingerbread, windows of spun sugar, a roof dripping with caramel. The air was thick with the scent of confections, an overwhelming sweetness that made my head spin. I turned to the girl, but she was gone. All that remained were her clothes, crumpled in a heap near a dark stain on the ground. My breath caught in my throat. No, she must have left, must have found her way home. I told myself this lie over and over. I stayed, I rebuilt. I tended to the plants, waiting for another lost soul to wander in. Each time I welcomed them. Each time I offered them salvation. And each time, when I awoke, they were gone. The hunger never returned, but neither did they.
I'd been driving nearly 9 hours, the highway unfurling endlessly beneath my tires like a black tongue. The last gas stop was far behind me, and my phone, with its signal fading, had dropped to 9% battery. The GPS kept flickering, struggling to hold on like it was gasping for air. Night had fallen thick and starless, the forest pressing in on both sides of the road. No cars passed. No lights appeared, only the tunnel of trees and my headlights cutting through the dark. I hadn't eaten since noon, and the mix of hunger and fatigue was making my vision blur. That was when I spotted it. a flickering neon light shining faintly through the trees. As I approached, I saw a faded sign reading, "Open 24/7. A dim neon glow hanging above a rundown drive-through burger shack that looked like an old McDonald's, standing alone at a forest junction. The place seemed abandoned, with chipped paint and grimy windows, but the lights were still on, and that was enough. I pulled in, lowered my window, and rolled up to the service screen. "Can I get a large rare beef burger? And a Coke?" No reply. Not at first. Then the window slid open, and a man stepped into view. Gaunt, almost skeletal, pale as wax. His eyes were wrong somehow. Like he wasn't looking at me. Not really. Just through me. He nodded once, wordless, then turned and shuffled into the back. A few minutes later, he returned with a white paper bag. I reached for my wallet to pay, but he didn't even glance at my hand. Just handed me the food and said in a flat voice,
"First sign, turn right."
I blinked. "Sorry, what?" He repeated with the exact same rhythm, the exact same blank expression.
"First sign, turn right."
"Right," I said awkwardly. "Thanks." I rolled up the window and pulled out of the lot, still chewing over his strange demeanor. My stomach growled. I balanced the paper bag on my knee, unwrapped the burger, and took a bite. The meat was cold and sour, with a metallic tang that reminded me of rust. I tried to chew, but the taste turned my stomach. I spat it into the wrapper, tossed the burger onto the back seat, and sighed. But whatever, it didn't matter anymore. I just needed to follow the guy's directions. First sign, turn right, and I'd be back on the highway, back to civilization. I turned right at the first sign, just as he told me. But as I kept driving, a strange feeling settled in. This road looked too familiar. The trees outside looked familiar. A certain jagged stump, a pothole on the asphalt I swore I had already swerved around. I shook my head. Just fatigue playing tricks. Then, as I crested a gentle bend in the road, I saw it. Again, that strange McDonald's-looking burger joint. The "Open 24/7 sign still flickered. The facade was crumbling, and the same man leaned out of the window staring at me with that vacant gaze. I slammed on the brakes, my heart lurched. I rolled down the window. "I already came through here. I followed your instructions." He didn't blink, just handed out another bag, identical to the last one. No words this time, just that motionless stare. "I don't want this," I said, pushing the bag back toward him. But before I could finish, the lights inside the building went out. The window slammed shut. In that instant, he was gone. No sound, no movement, just darkness pressing in around me. I hit the gas and sped off, barely breathing. This time, I didn't trust the man's directions. My phone buzzed again. 5% now. I followed the faint GPS signal instead, choosing a different road. After a while, I reached a rusted, nearly unreadable sign. The first sign. I slowed down and stopped at the junction, realizing with a jolt that somehow I was back at that same split in the road. I could either go straight or turn right. My hand hovered over the wheel, unsure. And just then, my phone went black, cutting off the last thread of direction I had. And then I heard it, a voice, soft and close, rising from the back seat.
"Turn right."
My throat clenched. I froze, breath trapped in my chest. Slowly, I turned my head. He was sitting there, the man from the drive-thru, but now his skin was ashen grey, stretched too tightly over his skull. His lips were split, blue and torn, and his eyes stared blankly, empty of anything human. As I watched, his face twitched, and he leaned forward, his jaw opening wide, too wide, tearing open at the edges with a wet crack as if his skin had split from the strain. I screamed and flung open the car door, stumbling out and crashing into the underbrush. I ran, branches clawing at my arms, my breath tearing through my throat. The forest closed in around me, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had to get away. I broke through the trees and found myself standing once more in front of the burger shack. But this time, it wasn't just decayed, it was rotting. The windows were shattered, the neon sign blinked in a deep, wound-like red, and dark smears on the cracked glass looked disturbingly like blood. The air reeked of raw meat and burnt rubber. My legs gave out, and I dropped to my knees, gasping for breath. Behind me, something scraped across the pavement. I turned slowly as the sound grew louder, a dragging noise like bone against asphalt. There he was again, but he no longer looked human. His uniform was soaked in dried blood, one sleeve torn, and an arm twisted unnaturally behind him. His mouth was fixed in a wide grin, tongue lolling, as he dragged a bloody drive-through headset behind him, its speaker crackling faintly. He stepped closer. I couldn't move.
Your turn.
He said, voice rasping like dry leaves. Then darkness swallowed me. I don't know how long it's been. Time doesn't seem to work here. But I'm here now. Behind the glass, staring through it, waiting for the next car. A girl just pulled in. Her voice is bright as she orders a burger and asks how to get back to the city. The radio in her car murmurs something about Highway 47, something about 20 disappearances, no bodies ever found. I smile. First sign, turn right. The air was cool and damp as I adjusted my headlamp, the beam of light cutting through the darkness of Nutty Putty Cave. My brother Josh was a few feet behind me, his breathing steady but cautious. We'd been exploring caves together for years, but this one felt different. There was something about the way the walls seemed to close in, the way the shadows danced just beyond the reach of our lights, that made my skin crawl. Still, I pushed forward. I was John Jones, a seasoned cave explorer. Fear wasn't something I entertained.
John, you sure about this?
Josh called out, his voice echoing off the narrow walls.
This part of the cave isn't mapped. We could get lost.
I grinned over my shoulder. That's the point, isn't it? Adventure, discovery, all that. Come on, Josh. Live a little. He muttered something under his breath, but I didn't catch it. My attention was already fixed on a narrow crevice ahead, barely 18 inches wide. My heart raced. This had to be it. A passage no one had ever documented. The birth canal, they called it. I'd heard stories, rumors of its existence, and now here it was, waiting for me. I'm going in, I announced, already squeezing my body into the gap.
John, wait!
Josh's voice was sharp, panicked.
We don't know what's down there!
But I was already moving, the cold stone pressing against my chest and back. The passage was tighter than I expected, the walls scraping against my shoulders as I inched forward. My headlamp flickered, casting eerie shadows on the jagged rock. I could hear Josh shouting behind me, but his voice grew fainter with every inch I advanced. And then, suddenly, I couldn't move. Panic surged through me as I tried to twist my body, to push myself backward, but the walls were too close. I was stuck. My heart pounded in my chest as I struggled, my elbows scraping against the rock. The air felt thinner now, and I could feel the weight of the cave pressing down on me. "Josh!" I screamed, my voice echoing through the narrow passage. "Josh, I'm stuck!" There was no response. I twisted my head as far as I could, but all I could see was darkness. I tried my best to squeeze through this section. Just getting past this part would mean I could make it out. I had memorized the map by heart. And then, without warning, I slipped and fell straight down. It happened so fast. One moment I was wedged in place, and the next I was sliding downward, the rough stone tearing at my clothes and skin. I tried to grab onto something, anything, but there was nothing to hold onto. I tumbled deeper into the cave, my body twisting and turning until I came to a sudden, jarring stop. I was upside down, my legs pinned above me, my head dangling in the empty void below. The pain was immediate, a searing ache that radiated through my chest and shoulders. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't obey. I was trapped, completely immobilized. "Josh!" I screamed again, my voice hoarse and desperate. "Help me!" But there was no answer. The cave was silent, save for the sound of my own ragged breathing. I didn't know how long I hung there, suspended in the darkness, but with each passing moment, the reality of my situation became more and more clear. I was going to die here. As the hours dragged on, my mind began to play tricks on me. I saw flashes of light, heard whispers in the darkness. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then I saw them. Shadows moving in the corners of my vision, figures standing just out of reach. One of them stepped closer, a man in a grey suit, his face obscured by the darkness. He didn't speak, didn't move, but I could feel his presence, cold and unyielding. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They weren't just in my head, they were real. The voices faint and distant, but they seemed to be guiding me out of this place. And then, as if a curtain had been lifted, I saw them. Dozens of them, their faces pale and gaunt, their eyes hollow. They were the ones who had come before me, the ones who had never left. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My body was numb, my limbs heavy and unresponsive. The figures closed in around me, their whispers growing louder, more urgent. They were waiting for me. I realized the truth. I was one of them now. The cave was sealed, the entrance buried under tons of rock. But in the darkness, I opened my eyes. The others were there, waiting for me, their faces twisted in silent agony. I joined them, my spirit bound to this place, just as theirs were. We were the guardians of Nutty Putty Cave, the ones who would wait in the shadows, watching, whispering, until the next adventurer came seeking the birth canal. And when they did, we would be ready. I can't remember how many times I've had this dream, but the fear and helplessness still make my heart ache. That's right, I'm terrified, absolutely haunted by spiders. As a child, I lived on my dad's insect farm, surrounded by spiders. The fear nearly gave me a fatal heart attack, leading my parents to divorce. Now, I live with my mum. My graduation is soon, but Dad didn't reply to my invitation. His last email, 2 weeks ago, proudly announced his success with mutant spider research. I have a bad feeling something went wrong with my dad's research. I've decided to go to his farm and make sure he's safe. It's been almost 10 years since I last set foot in this house. The house was pitch dark, damp, and eerily silent, with only my voice echoing as I cautiously called out, "Dad!" There was just one place left to check. Taking a deep breath, I tried to suppress my fear and turned the doorknob. Suddenly, a swarm of black spiders scurried out from behind the door. My body froze, trembling as I collapsed to the floor. At that moment, someone stepped out of the basement. It was my dad, George, the biologist, silently blowing a strange flute that sent the spiders retreating into the basement. Dad helped me up, his frail hand pale with black veins and dark, sharp hairs like a spider's bristles. Something was definitely wrong with him.
Why are you here, Jax?
I handed him the invitation card. He took it without a word, his cold demeanor cutting deep. Then I noticed something stuck on his eye. Instinctively, I reached out to remove it. It was a strand of spider silk, Not something accidentally caught in his eye, but something coming from inside it. Dad jerked back, clearly annoyed by my actions, and rubbed his eye. The strand of silk disappeared without a trace. Dad, my car broke down. Can I stay here for the night?
Fine. But stay in your room. Don't wander around.
Seeing Dad's odd behavior, I knew something was wrong, likely because of the spiders. I made an excuse to stay and find out. As a meticulous researcher, I figured Dad would have recorded his entire experiment. I was right. Taking a deep breath, I opened the first folder. Skipping the confusing reports, I clicked on the first video, and it terrified me. The clip showed a female spider carrying an enormous egg sac. The spider screamed in pain, like a woman about to give birth. But spiders lay eggs, don't they? My suspicions were quickly confirmed. I watched as a massive baby spider broke out of the egg, dragging its mother's insides with it. The hungry spider rushed to its first meal, while the mother lay weak, helpless, and still as her young devoured her. It was so cold-blooded, so cruel. It was more disgusting than any spider or monster I had ever imagined. It took me a moment to regain my composure. I opened the final video, but what I saw was even worse. I was sure this spider was no longer a normal creature. Thinking about how this mutated spider had been born, I feared for my dad. What would happen when those eggs hatched? Suddenly, my dad appeared in front of me, his face furious.
Jax! What are you doing here?
I forced down my fear and rushed to tear off his shirt, hoping what I had seen was just a scene from a sci-fi movie. But I was wrong. These spiders were more dangerous than I had imagined. Each egg was stuck to my dad's skin, with a tiny tentacle piercing his spine. They were living and growing off his spinal fluid. The fear in my chest grew stronger, and I felt dizzy, my hands and legs trembling uncontrollably. Looking up at my dad, I noticed his eyes were slowly turning into those of a spider. I heard him gasp and scream at me.
Run! Get out of here!
He still had his mind. He still cared for me. I had to save him, telling myself that. I grabbed a ruler from the desk and rushed toward him. I shoved him to the ground, using all my strength to crush the eggs on his back. One by one, they cracked open and the baby spiders fell, filling the air with the scent of blood and a foul odor. Suddenly, my dad erupted with strength. He shoved me off, screaming,
Don't hurt my children!
"You've lost it, Dad! I'm your son! I'll save you from these monsters!" I yelled, only to realize, in shock, that the man in front of me was no longer the dad I knew. He had fully transformed into a monster. He shielded the baby spiders like a true mother spider, glaring at me as though I were an enemy trying to harm his offspring. The look in his eyes caused me pain and despair. What could I do to save him? But it was too late. The monster, now enormous and with all the terrifying traits of a spider, stood before me. My body froze, even breathing felt difficult, and my heart began to ache again. My dad's agonizing scream jolted me back. I turned to see the newborn spiders, driven by instinct, making him their first meal. Survival instinct drove me to run. I tried to drag my dad with me, but it was already too late.
I was Corporal Thomas Baker. I served in the Army. Every morning we collected the dead. Every night the sky exploded with gunfire. Screams tore through the dark. There was no peace, no rest, not even in sleep. And yet, in the middle of all that death, the only thing that brought me comfort was our meals. While the other units gnawed on cold beans and tough jerky, we sat down to steaming stew so fragrant it felt like a gift from the gods. The man behind it all was Sam Gray. We called him Uncle Sam. He was technically the cook, But to us, he was more than that. He was a savior. No matter how bad the war got, Uncle Sam made sure we never went hungry. But then, things started to feel wrong. It was just another ordinary day on the front lines. By dinner, we were still laughing and cracking jokes like always. But unlike usual, the stew that night was incredible. Rich, flavorful, and so tender it melted the moment it touched the tongue. A few minutes later, things slowly began to change. One by one, people clutched their stomachs, dizzy and nauseous. At first, I thought it was nothing more than a stomach bug. But then it hit me too. Just as I was chewing a piece of meat, my throat tightened. I gagged, unable to breathe. I coughed hard, over and over, until something dropped into my hand. It was a fingernail. It looked human. I stared down at the meat left on my plate. Something felt wrong. The texture looked off. The color was too dark. I tried to reassure myself. Maybe it was just low-quality pork or a tough cut of old beef. But that fingernail, I couldn't make sense of it. I went to Uncle Sam and asked him what kind of meat we were really eating. He gave me the same warm smile he always did.
Don't worry, son. It's fresh meat.
But when I asked if I could see the kitchen, that smile vanished.
That area is off limits. Orders from above, Thomas.
There was something off about the way Uncle Sam responded. It felt like he was trying to cover something up. I couldn't just leave it alone. I had to find out the truth. Dawn had just broken. While the entire camp was still asleep, I quietly followed Uncle Sam. He walked with a light step, whistling softly, a basket swinging from his hand like he was just heading to the market to choose the best cut of meat. Maybe I should have turned back. I should have stayed out of it. But something in me said I couldn't stop now. Uncle Sam made his way to a locked shed behind the mess hall. I crept along the side and found a crack in the wooden wall. I leaned in and looked through. And what I saw was hell. There were bodies stacked high like slabs of meat in a slaughterhouse, bloodied and tangled together, still dressed in enemy uniforms. The stench hit me like a wave, thick, foul, rotting. Was this really the same smell I had once craved at dinner? Uncle Sam stepped up to one of the corpses, calm and unbothered. He pressed his fingers into the thigh like he was testing a cut of steak. Then he pulled out a knife, sliced a thick piece from the leg, and dropped it into the basket. All the while, he kept whistling like nothing was wrong. Another man entered.
Is this batch good, sir?
Fresh like this. It'd be a shame to waste it.
I stumbled backward, hands trembling from the horror I had just witnessed. I threw up behind the shed, and then everything went dark. I woke up tied to a chair, thick ropes dug into my wrists. In front of me was a metal table lined with plates of steaming meat. Uncle Sam stood nearby, wiping a carving knife, smiling like we were about to sit down for a warm family dinner.
You're awake, Thomas. Good.
You made us eat human flesh. You turned us into monsters.
Just the bodies of the enemy. You think the vultures would have let them rest in peace. So why should we waste them? People need food to survive.
I couldn't believe what I'd heard. My throat tightened with nausea, but somehow I felt a gnawing hunger rising inside me. Uncle Sam picked up a slice of freshly roasted meat.
You're special, Thomas. Others get sick. But you're adapting.
I shook my head. No, I'm not like you. But when he held the meat to my lips, I ate it. My stomach twisted violently. My muscles jerked like something was crawling beneath my flesh. Veins bulged across my arms, twitching like they were trying to escape. But then, it stopped. My body settled.
See? You're evolving. You are the future.
I had become Uncle Sam's experiment. He said the meat crisis would be a thing of the past, that everything would be taken care of. I told myself I hated him. But hunger erased everything. And God, I needed that taste like I was losing my mind.
I was miles away from home on a prolonged business trip when unexpected complications trapped me in a remote suburban area for 2 additional nights. Exhausted and desperate, I found myself scrolling urgently through Airbnb listings late into the night. The screen blinked discouragingly at me, every place fully booked except for one single room. The reviews glowed promisingly, rows upon rows of enthusiastic 5-star ratings. Yet, nestled amongst them was a solitary, troubling 1-star review with an ominous warning. Terrible place, reeks of death. My finger hesitated over the book now button for a brief moment, doubt lingering, but fatigue overcame my instincts, and I clicked confirm. When I arrived at the Airbnb, the host greeted me with an oddly enthusiastic and friendly smile. From the outside, the room appeared tidy, and I eagerly anticipated a restful sleep after an exhausting day. But contrary to my expectations, the moment the door opened, an overpowering scent of cheap air freshener assaulted my senses, desperately trying to mask an underlying stench of decay quietly lurking beneath. My gaze fell upon the pillowcase, stained with faded brownish blotches that suggested improper cleaning. The window bore a thin, neglected film of dust, making the room seem even more suffocating. I asked the host to clean the room thoroughly, but she reminded me that I'd checked in urgently during the night, and now it was far too late to clean immediately, promising she'd take care of it in the morning. I sighed softly, reassuring myself, it's just one night. I can endure it. Sleep overtook me swiftly, but in the silent dead of night, I jolted awake, feeling sharp pricks crawling beneath my skin, itchy and relentless. Turning on the bedside lamp, I stared in confusion at tiny, crimson spots scattered across my wrists and ankles, some oozing faint drops of blood. Must be a dust allergy, I murmured groggily, too exhausted to consider otherwise. Pulling the covers tight around myself, I forced my mind into unconsciousness once more. Morning brought no relief, quite the opposite. My scalp burned intensely with an itching sensation unlike anything I had ever experienced. Reaching up, my fingers were soon entangled in loose clumps of hair, sticky with some unknown secretion. Even more disturbing, a throbbing pain behind my shoulder prompted me to twist around, discovering a swollen, inflamed lump just beneath my skin, tender and hot to the touch. Perhaps my body was reacting to the room's questionable cleanliness. Surely my scalp was itching from resting on that stained, grimy pillow. Deeply unsettled, I contacted the host immediately, insisting she clean the room thoroughly while I was out working. Returning in the evening, the space showed superficial signs of tidying, yet a nagging sense of unease lingered stubbornly within me. Driven by suspicion, I lifted the mattress, recoiling at fresh, sinister stains beneath. Frustrated, I immediately started looking for a safer place to spend this final night. Tomorrow was an extremely important meeting, and I couldn't afford to lose any more sleep. While scrolling feverishly, my eyes landed on a TikTok video review eerily featuring the exact Airbnb room I occupied. A surge of dread compelled me to message the reviewer immediately. "Were you also in room 203? The reply came swiftly and bluntly. "Yes, and I'm the one who left that 1-star review." Before I could type another question, their account abruptly vanished, deleted without warning, as though forcibly silenced. Although I still had some doubts lingering inside, it didn't matter much since I'd fortunately managed to book another room. Yet just as I finished packing my luggage and prepared to leave, the sky suddenly opened up in a torrential downpour. Trapped again, frustration turned to resignation. Determined to protect myself, I laid clean towels atop the mattress, dressed head to toe in protective clothing, and liberally sprayed disinfecting essential oils around the room. No matter how careful I was, I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning. Near midnight, a sharp, unbearable itching beneath my skin forced me upright, gasping for breath. Panicked, I staggered to the bathroom, flipping on harsh lights, my heart racing. I stared in horror at a pale lump bulging under the skin of my neck, faintly writhing just beneath the surface. Shuddering violently, I tentatively touched the lump. Instantly, black, viscous fluid erupted, spraying into the sink, followed horrifyingly by a slippery, writhing appendage that squirmed grotesquely. I screamed, my entire body turning ice cold. Frantically, I called for an ambulance. Weakening rapidly, I stumbled back to pack my things, but paralysis crept slowly and insidiously through my limbs. Barely managing to reach the hallway, my body gave way, collapsing to the ground in painful convulsions. Blue veins began to bulge across my palms, thick and swollen, crawling outward like twisted branches beneath the surface of my skin. They pulsed in an unnatural rhythm, dark and menacing. Suddenly, my neck split open with a sharp, searing pain. A slick, slug-like creature slid out briefly, then pulled back in, leaving thick black blood trailing down my chest. Another wave of nausea hit me, and I threw up again. This time, a half-formed parasite came out, still alive, twitching weakly on the floor. Before darkness claimed me, I saw the hallway security camera pivot, slowly toward my prone, convulsing form, watched coldly from behind a screen by the host herself. Later, waking in the sterile whiteness of a hospital room, I struggled to comprehend my circumstances. With a solemn face, the doctor explained I'd been infected by a rare parasite because of filthy bedding and poorly maintained plumbing. It was my worst nightmare coming true. Right after the doctor left, the host appeared with a smile, holding out a thick wad of cash.
The previous guest had an accident. After handing things over to the police, I still have to keep my business running to survive. I hope you understand. Please give me a 5-star review, and let's not make a big deal out of this.
I couldn't believe what I had just heard. So that was it. She was using money to cover everything up. What was I supposed to do with a woman this shameless?
They say the world was once ruled by fear, not joy. Before Christmas became a time of celebration, it was a season of terror. Winter nights were longer, colder, and filled with the dread of monstrous creatures. Bipedal reindeer, with fur as black as the void, twisted antlers like thorns of hell, and eyes glowing red as embers. These were no ordinary reindeer. They didn't pull sleighs, they rode them, and their sleds weren't loaded with gifts of cheer, but with the tormented souls of the damned, cursed to drag the reindeer through the skies, screaming into the frigid night. Every year, at the end of winter, the air would fill with the haunting sound of bells, signaling the arrival of their terrible gifts, not toys or candy, but death, fear, and despair. The village was gripped by unspeakable dread. Cursed presence appeared everywhere. There was the wooden mask, carved with an eerie precision, which once worn fused to its victim's face, trapping them forever behind its hollow stare. Another was the ominous countdown clock, its hands ticking backward. It would drain the very life from whoever held it, leaving only an empty shell behind. Each year, these cursed artifacts would appear on doorsteps, bringing ruin to all who touched them. No one escaped their fate. That fateful night, my mother and I huddled together in our small wooden cabin, every light extinguished. The darkness felt like a blanket of safety, but we knew better. The reindeer didn't need light to find us. They could smell fear. And in our home, fear was thick. The bells came first, their chime low and ominous, cutting through the howling wind. Then, the front door burst open, laughter followed, a high-pitched, maniacal sound that made my skin crawl. A small, tattered box waited on the doorstep, as if it had always been there. Its faded tag bore the words, "The sinner Evelyn," my mother's name. I begged her not to touch it, but her hands shook as she reached for it, as if she were hypnotized. Inside was a threadbare doll. Its eyes, dull at first, flared a hellish red as its stitched mouth curled into a sinister grin. My mother's body seized violently. She fell, writhing on the floor, frothy foam bubbling from her lips as she mumbled in an unearthly tongue. Her only sin was raising me alone. Yet for that, she was condemned to a fate worse than death. Before I could scream, they came. The monstrous reindeer seized her, dragging her to their sleigh. She became another cursed soul bound to their infernal sleigh, leaving me alone with the cold and the fear. Desperate and enraged, I grabbed the nearest thing, pine cones scattered near the hearth, and hurled them at the creatures. To my shock, the reindeer shrieked, their movements becoming erratic. They scratched at their fur as if trying to rid themselves of some unseen torment. One by one, they stumbled and retreated into the night, their howls of pain echoing through the frozen air. It wasn't until later that I realized what had happened. Pine. These monsters were allergic to it. The scent, the texture, it weakened them. And so, I began to prepare. For an entire year, I worked tirelessly. My family had always been woodworkers, and I knew the forest well. I harvested pine, crafting weapons and traps. I forged a plan, waiting for the next winter, the next chance to avenge my mother and end the reign of these beasts. When the time came, I stood at the edge of the pine forest, wooden sword in hand and a sack full of pine cones slung over my shoulder. I called out to them, taunting them, daring them to face me. They came, as I knew they would. The bells tolled, the sky darkened, and the ground shook beneath their heavy steps. The lead reindeer, its antlers larger and more twisted than the rest, bared its jagged teeth and charged. I ran, leading them deep into the forest where the air was thick with the scent of pine. I ducked behind a large tree, holding my breath as the creatures slowed, their heads swinging wildly, unable to find me. From the shadows, I struck. With a single thrust of my wooden sword, I jabbed it straight into the mouth of the lead reindeer. Its body collapsed, its death cry piercing the night. The others hesitated, disoriented and vulnerable. I hurled pine cones at them, watching as they thrashed and stumbled, their strength waning. One by one, they fell. When the dawn broke, I emerged from the forest victorious. I had captured the surviving reindeer, binding them with ropes infused with pine resin. They would no longer bring death and despair to my village. Instead, I repurposed their sleigh. I filled it with gifts, dolls, sweets, and books I had crafted over the year, and rode through the village, delivering them to the homes of those who had lived righteously. I urged the people to embrace kindness and generosity, for these virtues were invisible to the reindeer. And so, Christmas was born, not as a time of fear, but of joy and giving. Each year I returned with my sleigh, pulled by the subdued reindeer, their savage instincts kept in check by the scent of pine that lingers on my sleigh's reins. But I remind everyone, the reindeer are still out there, lurking, waiting for the chance to escape. And so we light our homes with warmth and kindness, and we hang pine wreaths on our doors to keep the darkness at bay. This is the tale of how I, once a terrified boy named Nick, became a legend.
I'm Edna, and I live in a village near the edge of the forest. The young girls here are often targeted by big wolves, and these red scarves dyed with madder roots are the only things that protect us.
Edna, we need your help. Ruby got hurt and can't go into the forest. Can you take her place?
Of course I can. Every year, the villagers send a girl into the forest to give offerings to the old witch, hoping she'll bring a bountiful harvest.
You have to hand this basket to her and follow her instructions. And remember, don't lose this red scarf, or the wolves will smell you.
I looked at Ruby, who was supposed to go. She looked at me anxiously, like she wanted to say something. I know going into the forest is dangerous, but I agreed to take Ruby's place because I want to find out what happened to my sister, Sophie, who disappeared 5 years ago. This forest is always foggy, damp and dark, making it hard to tell day from night. The only colours I see are from the mushrooms. I tried picking one, but even though they look pretty, they smell like rotten meat. I saw some bright red flowers too, but I didn't want to pick them anymore. I heard wolves howling all over the forest. I felt like a pair of bloodthirsty eyes was secretly watching me in the dark. But when I turned around, I didn't see anything. I felt really uneasy. I walked a little further and found a bear. It was lying weakly on the ground, with its leg trapped under a big branch. It looked like it had been there for days. I felt sorry for the bear and wanted to help. I tried lifting the branch, but it wasn't as heavy as I thought. While I was using my Red Riding Hood to bandage the bear's leg, it suddenly thanked me. It scared me.
Thank you, kind girl. To thank you, I'll warn you that a wolf is following you.
I surprised, but quickly responding. Don't worry, I have this red scarf. The wolf won't be able to find me.
No one who's been targeted by the wolf can escape.
Don't worry, I'll go to the witch's house right away. I'll be safe there. I finally found the wooden house in the middle of the forest.
Come in.
The whole house smelled damp and cold. Mushrooms were growing on the corners of the walls and next to the table, making the house seem like it was part of the forest outside. It didn't feel warm or safe at all. It seemed like the owner of this house was very lonely. My name is Edna. The villagers sent me to visit you. Are you sick?
Yes, I'm sick. So please let me lie in bed and don't come near me.
I thought fresh food might make the old woman feel better. But when I opened the basket, all the food was rotten. This is strange. It shouldn't take more than half a day to get here from the village. How could the food go bad so quickly?
You must be hungry. I've made you a mushroom soup.
I did as she said and opened the pot of soup, but the soup inside was dark and thick, with a fishy smell that made me want to throw up. I don't make the old woman sad. I secretly poured the soup away. The soup was delicious. Thank you for dinner. The lonely old woman wanted me to stay with her for the night, but in the middle of the night, I was woken up by the sound of her whispering with someone. Curious, I looked towards the door. The person I thought was an old woman had a face exactly like my sister, Sophie.
Hansel, you're late.
That girl dropped her red scarf, which made me lose track and eat a corpse. It was disgusting.
She ate the mushroom soup and fell asleep, just like our agreement. You take the soul, and I take the body.
Was my poor sister possessed like this too? My whole body froze, and I ran out of that scary house, trembling. It turned out that the sacrifice wasn't the offerings I brought, but myself. I have to escape this forest and expose the horrible truth to the villagers. The bright red flowers from the day were actually dried pools of blood, and the colourful mushrooms grew from them. They were the ones causing the hallucinations. It seems these mushrooms were the real cause of the illusions. I met the bear I had saved again, but it had been dead for days, its body rotting, its stomach ripped open. Suddenly, a cold wind rushed by, making my hair stand on end. Hansel had caught my scent. Terrified and desperate, I tried to back away from the evil creature. My hand crushed a cluster of mushrooms. These mushrooms, although they caused me to hallucinate, also made me stronger. I recklessly grabbed the whole cluster and ate them greedily. A feeling of dizziness washed over me. A sense of power filled my entire body. I stubbornly charged forward and attacked, stabbing the village chief in the eye, making him scream in pain. After taking down the wolf, I ran away, but Sophie blocked my path. Her body had rotted, turning into a giant, hideous mushroom. I picked up the bare bone and rushed to fight, but the person in front of me was just an illusion. Confused, I looked at my hand, and suddenly my stomach felt like it was being pierced through with pain. The feeling of pain pulled me out of the hallucination. It turned out I was just struggling in vain. That bastard Hansel had caught me, taken over me. My body was being enveloped by the mushrooms. I could clearly feel my soul being gradually sucked away. There was no more pain, no more torment, only a numbness that led to death.